Thanksgiving week is here, one of the best times of the year. It's all about the food, fellowship, and football. For our purposes, of course, we will be focusing on the football. 3 games on tap for Thursday. Would like to go through all 3 of those quickly and also touch on a few of the Sunday matchups. Why don't we start in Detroit, where the Lions will host the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings, of course, have won 6 straight games to improve to 8-2 on the season. But Detroit has very quietly won 3 straight, and they're 6-4, just 2 games back of the Vikings in the NFC North. So this a crucial matchup for both teams. Now, the Vikings have had trouble with the Lions lately. Detroit has taken 5 of the last 7 meetings between these two teams, including earlier this season on October 1st, Detroit going into Minnesota and beating the Vikings 14-7. And that's really the common denominator here with these games lately. They've all been low scoring. Detroit has won the last 3 meetings, but has scored just 4 combined touchdowns in those games. And I don't expect the Matt Stafford-led Detroit offense to have much success here against a Vikings defense that ranks top 5 in points allowed, and yards per play allowed. This Vikings D totally shut down a really good Rams offense last week, holding them to just 7 points. But the Vikings not particularly explosive on offense. They are sort of conservative, like to keep things close to the vest. Case Keenum, sort of a check down Charlie. He has been efficient this season, but it's mostly been with dink and dunk type passes, so certainly not going to scare the Detroit defense. I think this is going to be another low-scoring sort of grind of a game. Whichever team wins the turnover battle will likely come out on top. The total here of 44.5 looks a bit high to me. I am on the under in this one. Moving on now to Dallas, where the Cowboys will host the LA Chargers. Chargers favored by 1.5 at BetSafe, 47.5 the total here. Now the Chargers at 4-6 and the Cowboys at 5-5, but these teams sure feel like they're headed in opposite directions. Dallas seems to be collapsing. Back-to-back blowout losses now. The latest one, 37-9 to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're still without some of their best players on both sides of the ball. Star running back Ezekiel Elliott, of course, still suspended by the NFL. Sean Lee, their best player on defense, still injured and out. And they may be without left tackle Tyron Smith here once again, as Smith is fighting through a groin injury and is listed as questionable for this game. Now, they'll need Tyron Smith. They need a lot of help along that offensive line right now. The Cowboys O-line has surrendered 11 sacks in the team's past 2 games, and they're facing a Chargers defense here that is 3rd in the NFL in sacks with 30 on the season. This Chargers defense features 2 of the best young pass rushers in the NFL in Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, so I do not have high hopes for the Dallas offense in this one. And this Dallas defense has been vulnerable, especially in the secondary. The Chargers, meanwhile, very balanced on the offensive side of the ball. They can run it with Melvin Gordon. They can throw the ball with Phillip Rivers. Look, I think the Chargers are just a better team than Dallas right now, and I think they're a good bet to go into Dallas and pick up the win here. I like LA on the money line at 186. Moving on now to Washington, where the Redskins will host the New York Giants. Skins a 6.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 45.5 the total here. Now the Giants, of course, just 2-8 on the year. They have been one of the NFL's most disappointing teams, but they're coming off their best performance of the season. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs 12-9 last week. Was a clear sign that this New York team has not yet folded the tent. They are still playing hard. And in a situation like this, prime time, Thanksgiving night against a division rival, I do expect a motivated Giants team. This is effectively their Super Bowl, so I think they're going to play hard against the Redskins. And I'll tell you what, the Redskins in some trouble right now. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. Just a gut-wrenching defeat last Sunday in New Orleans. Washington held a 2-score lead late in the game, but they could not hold on, went on to lose in overtime. Was a type of loss that really might be tough to recover from, especially with all the injuries this Redskins team is dealing with. I mean, you look at the offensive side of the ball. Last week they lost running back Chris Thompson, maybe the most productive offensive player this season, and the offensive line has just been ravaged by injuries. They'll be shuffling guys around again this week. They may be rolling out a new starting center, and the defense hasn't been any good either. The Redskins defense has allowed 33 points or more in 4 of the team's last 5 games. So look, I know they're facing a bad Giants team here, but something tells me 6.5 points might be too many in this situation. I expect the Giants to give Washington a game here, and I think they're a good-looking bet as a 6.5-point dog. Moving on now to the Sunday games, why don't we start in New York, where the Jets will host the Carolina Panthers. Panthers a 4.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 40.5 the total in this one. Now, at first glance, this game seems fairly straightforward. The Panthers have won 3 straight. They sit at 7-3 on the season, while the Jets have lost 4 of 5. They are now just 4-6 on the year. Their postseason hopes certainly on life support. But I'll tell you what, don't sleep on the Jets here. They're coming off a bye, and you look at their recent performances, even in the losses, they haven't played all that poorly. All 4 of their recent losses have come by 7 points or fewer, and the only one that came by 7 points was against the New England Patriots. This Jets defense has been solid this season. They've held 7 of the last 8 opponents to 25 points or fewer, and the Carolina offense can fall asleep at times. The Panthers, I know they beat Miami big in their last game, 45-21 over the Dolphins in their last game, but prior to that, in Carolina's 4 previous games, they averaged just 15.7 points per game. The Panthers lead the NFL in time of possession. The Jets, also with a ball control offense, likes to shorten the game, keep the opposition on the sideline. So, I don't know. Something tells me this is going to be a low-scoring, close game, closer than the experts are predicting. I think the Jets a sneaky play here as a 4.5-point home dog. Moving on now to Sunday's best game. The New Orleans Saints heading west to face the LA Rams. Rams a 2.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 53.5 the total in this one. Now the Rams coming off a disappointing loss to the Minnesota Vikings in which their offense was held to just 7 points. But this LA offense still second in the NFL in points scored, averaging 30.3 points per game. And the Saints defense certainly vulnerable. Now, the Saints have played better defensively than many thought they would over the past couple of months, but still, they're coming off a game against Washington in which they allowed 456 total yards, 322 passing yards, and 31 points. So I do think the Rams are going to have room to operate here. I expect them to bounce back in a big way after being shut down by the Vikings last week. But I'll tell you what, the Saints should be able to do some damage on offense themselves. They have scored 111 combined points in their last 3 games. And moreover, this should be a good matchup for them. The Saints have really been running the ball well this season, 3rd in the NFL in rushing offense, and tied for 1st in yards per carry, averaging 4.8 yards per carry. And they're facing a Rams defense here that is 28th against the run and is surrendering 4.5 yards per carry. So look, I think both offenses are going to be able to move the ball, do what they want to do. And even though 53.5 is a pretty big total, I do not think it is big enough in this situation. I am on the over here. Final game I'd like to talk about in this Week 12, what about the Sunday Nighter? The Green Bay Packers going on the road to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers a 13.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 42.5 the total. Have you ever seen a team fall apart as quickly as the Packers have fallen apart since losing Aaron Rodgers? I mean, they look like a Super Bowl contender for the first month and a half of the season, and lately they have looked like one of the very worst teams in the NFL. The Packers have lost 4 of their last 5 games. In those 5 games, their offense producing just 12 points per game. And here they're facing a Pittsburgh defense that is among the NFL's best. The Steelers 4th in the league in yards allowed, 2nd in points allowed, surrendering just 16.5 points per game. And while I know that Steelers offense has been a little inconsistent this season, they did just hang 40 points on the Tennessee Titans last week, and they're facing a Packers defense here that ranks in the bottom half of the league in both yards allowed and points allowed. So look, Pittsburgh is just going to roll here. It's not a question of who, it's only a question of how many. And I think the answer to that is going to be more than 13.5. I like Pittsburgh here, not worried about the 13.5-point number. This one will be over by halftime. There you have it, folks. Those are some of my thoughts on Week 12 of this NFL season. I wish you best of luck no matter what you decide to do this week, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. For BetSafe, I'm John Arnett.